So good evening, members of the Board of Education, Mr. McHale, and valued members of our Closter community. So before I begin, I want to take a moment to recognize the Finance and Fiscal Plan Committee. Mr. Edmund Choi is our chair. Members Ms. Melody Finkelstein, Ms. Janine Maisera, and Ms. Abhishek Ravid. I'm grateful for your time, your thoughtful questions, and the trust that you've placed in this process. Your dedication made this a better budget. Mr. McHale's leadership is driven by one thing, what is best for schools. So happy birthday to you. And thank you as well for your continued availability and support throughout what has been a very challenging budget season. So I know I say this every year that the budget, any budget presentation, that budget is getting harder, but somehow each budget year brings even more challenges than the last budget. So there's that always thing of challenging budget season. I also would like to recognize our core administration leaders, Ms. Diane Smith, principal of Hillside Elementary School, Ms. Christine Cipollini, principal of Tenneco Middle School, and Ms. Lori Cohen, director of special services. Also to Joe Scaglione, our supervisor of buildings and grounds, and Vince Salvati, our network engineer. Each of them, along with the staff that they lead, play an important role in providing the information and input needed to build this budget. This truly was a team effort in terms of the budget. So a school district budget is more than just numbers. It is a financial roadmap that reflects our priorities, our values, and our commitment to providing the best education for our students. So tonight, the Board of Education is asked to approve this preliminary budget for submission to the Bergen County Office of the New Jersey Department of Education. This approval is required before the public hearing on April 30th, when the final budget will be presented for adoption. The Finance Committee has reviewed and recommended this budget. This year was different in one important way. The Board of Education engaged early in discussions about the direction of the tax levy. That proactive conversation was especially valuable given the financial pressures that districts and municipalities across New Jersey are facing, particularly the rising cost of goods and services and health benefits. So thank you to the trustees. Again, the decisions you make, particularly around the taxes, are not always the most popular, but they are made with the best interests of our students and our community. I also want to highlight an important distinction. Budget planning is not the same as budget execution. All right, so the budget is built on estimated costs. We plan conservatively to account for potential increases. Any year-end surplus should not be seen as poor planning, but it reflects prudent financial management. A surplus allows us to absorb unexpected costs and protect the district's financial health without impacting our programs. So tonight's presentation will cover the following topics. Go over the enrollment trends, not necessarily trend, but information about enrollment and how that impacts our budget, the budget development process, our revenues, our expenses or appropriations, the capital projects, the tax impact, and the next steps in the public hearing. I will walk through each section to give you a full picture of how this budget was built and what it means for our schools and our community. All right, this slide shows two sets of enrollment numbers side by side. On the left side is the October 15, 2025 snapshot, the state's official cutoff date. So these figures are critical because they are used to determine state aid allocations for our district. State aid is calculated based on resident student numbers, not total enrollment. So the pre-K tuition-based program does not count towards state aid calculation. On the right side is our updated enrollment as of last week, March 4th, which gives you a current picture of where we were. At Hillside Elementary School, the snapshot showed 604 students, 25 pre-K tuition-based students, and 66 special education students. As of March, that has grown to 606 students with 24 pre-K and 70 special education students. At Tenneco Middle School, October showed 583 students with 91 in special education. As of March, we have 587 students with 88 in special education. Out of district placements were 18 in October and 17 as of March. Since the snapshot date, the district's resident count has increased by 6. A small number, but relative to what we were or what we have been awarded in state aid, this enrollment number for which we were not given credit for. So, we have 6 new students. We didn't receive funding for the 6 students because the cutoff date is October 15th. Enrollment and projections are essentials. Fluctuations in student numbers directly impact our funding, class sizes, staffing needs, and program decisions. It is one of the key drivers of our annual budget. So the budget development process. The budget process for the 26-27 school year began in the fall with revenue projections. Budget spreadsheets were distributed to all district administrators and department heads. Their proposals were submitted and consolidated into a master budget, which went through many revisions as we worked to balance the district needs with fiscal challenges. The key milestone was reached when the New Jersey Department of Education released its state aid figures earlier in the day. So I will walk you through the details of this preliminary budget, highlighting how it reflects our district goals and our commitment to responsible stewardship of public funds. So trustees, please feel free to stop me during the presentation if you have any questions or clarifications, and then Mr. McHale and I will try to respond, or will respond to your questions. So a budget is a planning document. It accounts for projected costs, potential uncertainties, and necessary reserves to manage financial risks. Our conservative approach ensures stability while maintaining our commitment to educational excellence. Several factors can affect the final expenditure after the budget is adopted. So health benefits rate, that is not finalized until October of this year. So we're projecting something that is, right now it's March, 7 months away. Federal and extraordinary aids also are amounts that also change. Students with IEPs may require out-of-district placement or additional services. We could have an influx of students moving in, so there's always this flexibility and movement around our budget. These realities reinforce why a cautious and strategic approach is so important. So before a single number was finalized, we followed a deliberate process, right? about it. And one that included our staff, our administration, and obviously our trustees. So collaborative planning. We had multiple planning meetings with Mr. McHale and the admin team, met with the principals, supervisors, instructional and support staff. We're all part of the conversations in identifying priorities. We reviewed instructional, operation, and facility needs across both buildings. Then there's a financial review. We analyzed prior year's spending trends and reviewed all contractual obligations and fixed costs. We looked for efficiencies and cost controls and explored multi-year agreements to generate long-term savings, at the same time buying us some time. Hopefully things would open up and be a better financial landscape for the entire state in 2 or 3 years. Governance and oversight. The Finance Committee held discussions and reviewed the draft budget, and the full board discussed a draft budget on February 12th. We also considered county data, statewide trends, and the fiscal challenges many districts are navigating this year. We've been responding to multiple surveys from different admin association. The superintendents had one, the business administrators had a survey as well of different scenarios that districts are going for in terms of potential tax impact, also including the potential cuts. And we are in a very good position and very proud to say that this budget is it's a budget that is very sustainable. Balanced decision making. Every decision in this budget comes back to two priorities: maintaining the programs and services for our students and the responsible stewardship of taxpayers' resources. That balance guides everything that we do. Here is a summary of the key priorities reflected in this year's budget. For instructional resources, we are continuing to fund supplies, materials, textbooks, and web-based services that our teachers and students depend on. Staffing, we are going to maintain current staffing level, but vacancies from this school year will remain unfilled to help manage costs without reducing services to students. Capital improvements. We have allocated $1,369,000 for facility upgrades and infrastructure improvements. I will walk through each of those projects in detail shortly. Facilities and maintenance. Funding has been increased for maintenance slightly. Custodial services and grounds upkeep to keep our buildings safe, clean, well-maintained, and snow-free. It gets very expensive in terms of snow removal because it all depends on how much snow we're getting. As far as technology, we are maintaining our student device program and continuing to upgrade our network infrastructure to support instruction and daily operations. Minimizing tax impact. We are applying $255,000 from the Capital Reserve Fund as a principal payment on our 2023 debt series. This helps manage the overall tax levy impact for our community. So this is a budget of stability. It is not a budget of growth. It is designed to protect what matters most, which is our program, staff, and our students, while remaining, again, fiscally responsible to our community. Okay, for this section, both the community members and the trustees, I'm asking you to take a look at the revenue page of the handouts. For this section, I will be going over all the revenue line items and what that means and how we've arrived at these decisions. So these figures are compared against the modified budget rather than the original budget approved last year. The modified budget reflects additional aid received during the current school year that was not anticipated when the budget was originally adopted in April of 2025. For transparency, the original budget is also included for your comparison. So the proposed budget includes a 6.64% increase in the local general fund tax levy. This year, we are using $1,096,491 healthcare cost adjustment, which allows us to exceed the standard allowable tax levy increase. The decision to apply the full allowable adjustment was a difficult one, but it was necessary. When I go over the various expense lines, you will hear more details about the healthcare cost increase and all the other costs that went up. Choosing not to use the allowable healthcare cost adjustment would have left the district with no other option but to make deep and painful cuts across the board. Tuition revenue. So the tax levy is $203,081. Tuition revenue is generated through our integrated preschool program, which consists of 3 classes. For the coming year, we will accept 27 tuition students, generating $343,710 in revenue. Additionally, the district hosts a summer enrichment program with an estimated revenue of $5,000. It is important to note that this program carries a corresponding expense offset. So it was never intended as an income-generating initiative, but rather just an opportunity to extend meaningful learning experiences for our students beyond the regular school year. Miscellaneous revenue consists of interest earnings from our district bank accounts, facility rental fees from the Korean schools, the Champions Before and After Care, and interest from Capital Reserve and our Emergency Reserve, Capital Reserve, Maintenance Reserve, and Emergency Reserve accounts. These projections align with audited figures from fiscal years 2023 and 2024 and reflect our strategy of maximizing investment returns. Regarding state aid, so the governor has maintained funding, or really increased overall education funding, continuing the same measures from last year to prevent drastic aid reductions. So the state has capped the funding increases at 6% and decreases at 3% to limit financial disruptions for districts. So if you remember a couple of slides ago, our October 15th enrollment count decreased by 16. So I didn't show that, but our enrollment last year was at 1,996. And we are now at 1,980, right? Did I say 1,880?
You said 900.
90. Well, we were at 1,896, and then we're down to 1,880. So that's a difference of 16 students. Sorry. This year, a state aid, which is 1,652,351, is a 3% reduction. So we're part of the district that received the 3% reduction. The 3% cap actually worked in our favor this time. Without it, our aid would have dropped to 64,915 instead of 51,000. So we would have had to find more cuts. But we were anticipating the reduction of state aid because our enrollment numbers as of October 15 did go down. Our district has a strong track record of fiscal responsibility, consistently depositing into various reserves and generating excess surplus to help offset tax increases in the following year's budget. So the district would face great tax burden or potential program reductions without the surplus. As of June 30, the excess surplus totaled $650,000, which will be utilized in the 2026-2027 budget. Looking ahead, we will continue to generate surplus, but will gradually reduce our reliance on them to ensure financial stability. On the facilities side, we are maintaining our prior year approach by withdrawing $340,000 from our maintenance reserve fund for routine maintenance operations. For larger capital needs, it's $1,369,000 from capital reserve plus the $255,000 to pay for the principal payment, and that adds up to the $1,624,000. Certain revenue sources, such as extraordinary aid and prior year rollovers, are not included in the budget at this stage, as they are determined at the conclusion of the audit cycle. In terms of overall revenue picture, the total general fund or operating budget is $30,109,142. It is important to note that this figure includes capital projects. So when we exclude the capital reserve withdrawal, which I also showed on your handouts, the direct operational expenses or the operating revenue comes down to $28,485,142. Are there any questions about the revenue so far? I know it's a lot of numbers, I'm sorry. I have a lot to do to go over. All right. Special revenue and debt service. In addition to local and state revenue, the district receives a federal grant, or receives federal grants, namely Title I and IDEA. These funds support various district initiatives, such as contributing to the basic skills teacher's salary. That's part of Title I. And for IDEA award, we use a portion of the award for the Region 3 Special Education Assessment, as well as out-of-district special education tuition. Closter has a non-public school in our jurisdiction, Acton Academy. So even though it's a separate entity, the Acton Academy receives non-public aid. So they have a textbook aid, they have technology aid, they have Chapter 192, 193 services. They still fall under our management. So it's a small amount of grant, but we still have to manage their grants. And then other local grants, including PTO, are also accounted for in the budget. The total budgeted amount for grants and entitlements is $547,520, though this amount may fluctuate based on funding availability. Did I say 400? Sorry, 471,107, not 547.
Okay.
Following the successful bond referendum in 2023, this marks the third year of debt service payment, and the total debt repayment, including principal and interest, is $472,275, with the state covering $160,556 through debt service aid. So this reduces the local tax share for debt repayment to $311,719. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we are applying $255,000 from capital reserve to offset principal payment on our debt. So therefore, between the debt, the taxpayer's share of $56,719, the $255,000 capital reserve, and the debt service aid gives us the total of $472,275. So the overall budget for the district, including grants and entitlements and debt repayment, is $31,052,524. Okay, trustees, 2 days ago I emailed you two versions of the budget. One assuming flat aid and one reflecting the anticipated reduction in state aid. The copy in front of you tonight is the version with a 3% reduction, detailed line by line by budget. I also prepared three key documents for tonight's discussion to help everyone in the room better understand the district's budget. So for the members of the public and also the trustees have it, there's a sheet called Explanation of Accounts that tells you how all these things are being accounted for. It's fun. There's different account numbers for every single category of expense for the district. The New Jersey Department of Education provides us with a chart of accounts, and all these expenses use standardized object code to ensure consistent financial reporting across the districts. And then you have this very colorful chart, which is a program budget estimate by object code. So this is a visually organized, color-coded chart designed to help you follow the structure of the district's budget. And then the first three columns of this represents the detail account numbers and the program function, which aligns with the Department of Education. So you would see there's an account number, and then there are letters, A to double K, and then the name, program, and function. And then by placing side by side with this last sheet, which is the state-defined advertised appropriation sheet, summarizes all the programs by category, such as regular education, special education, basic skills, etc. These figures align with how the budget is published in the Bergen Record before the April 30th public hearing, the user-friendly budget, which will be available on the district website, and then it would also be, this is how every single thing is being recorded and reported to the state. So, to make it simple, regular programs instruction covers letters U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. So that's how you kind of like read that. But if we go back to this colored, sheet, the state, the program budget estimate by object code, the 100 and 200 columns, that's 17 million and 6 million, which together accounts for 23.1 million of the overall budget. That is salaries and benefits. So the biggest bulk of our budget is salaries and benefits. That also includes, the base salaries, health insurance, retirement contributions, Social Security, and other employee-related costs. These fixed expenses are essential for maintaining our current programs. Also, I will walk through where the key changes are taking place across all our budget categories and what they mean for our overall budget. So as a reminder as well, and to share this not a reminder, but I want to share this information that in the state budget software, we are required to explain any changes of an increase or a decrease of 4%. So any plus or minus 4%, there has to be a corresponding explanation. And I'll go over some of the things there for you guys. All right, so for A, we have A represents your special education out-of-district placement tuition. That's budgeted at 17 out-of-district students with 14 confirmed students and 3 on referrals or on the potential of going out of district. So you'd see that there's a reduction that's just based on actual numbers. That's why there's a big 15.24% reduction between the modified and the current budget. Attendance is a 10.98% increase. And that is based on the allocation of salary, hours in office for preparation, as well as office coverage when necessary. Health services this year has an increase in agency nurses needed for coverage, but then overall it's back to like the same kind of like standard. So trustees, this would be a better thing for you to look at. Also, this would still be something that you can look at. For speech, OT, other related services, close to 4% increase. These are contracted increase, summer sessions, contracted hours and services, IEP evaluations. Extraordinary services, similar level as budget last year, but with fewer services needed based on the 17 out of district placement. Now, that's based on a projected count. If we have to make adjustments, we're going to have to make adjustments over the course of the year. Guidance. That represents a 3.42% increase. That's counselors with the additional 5 days of work in the summer. Child study team, it's relatively a small increase in 0.99% overall increase. That's current staffing level and share of district and region 3. Curriculum and instruction, those are contracted increases as well as increase in the Northern Valley Curriculum Center. That's 5.56% increase. Looks significant, but if we're looking at just based on dollars, it's from $170,000 to $180,000. It's a $10,000 increase. Library media services, you see a big reduction there. We've entered into a couple of multi-year agreement for software, thanks to Ms. EO and to Ms. Cipollini and the crew and everyone really. We've worked on trying to get these services and web-based and the quotes to get these web-based services for the library taken care of. So that's why there's a big line item on online references at $32,550. That's page 2 of 10 of this big packet, versus back to what it was budgeted now at $7,800. Instructional staff training. We scheduled a special training in June to prepare for next year, and that's why you see a big difference between the modified year's budget of $85,000 to $65,874. General administration, we had some rolled over deductibles for potential claims. So there's an increase, but then it goes back again to the same level of budget from the prior year. School administration has a reduction of negative 5.23% based on the modified budget, because we're strategically stocking up on office supplies from copy papers, and also we are going to be, currently there's about $24,000 not spent, but we have plans on that, and as well as graduation costs is included in this line. Central services, so there's a 3% increase on that line, but reduced line on supplies, because again we're stocking up and also budget software adjustment. Admin and information technology is a 1.53% increase, very slight increase. It's just based on the hours as well as this, the needed programs and technology purchases. Maintenance for school facilities, so it's a reduction of 16.98%, but I want you to take a look at the in terms of maintenance. In the original budget, it went from 1.62 million to 1.67 million. So there's still an increase there. Over the course of the year, that's for maintenance and operation of plants and services, custodial. Over the course of the year, we usually move some funds in those lines because, again, maintenance and custodial lines are also unpredictable, and we've used extraordinary aid to allocate funding there. Care and upkeep of grounds is a 2.27% increase. Security is a 19.21% decrease. It's really from $26,500, which is budgeted, to modified budget of $32,800 because we purchased new walkies, installed locker codes, and also things from the outside as well, securing some securing some gates. And then it goes back to the same level of budget, which is $26,500. Student transportation. So as part of Region 3 Consortium, transportation for us is a little bit manageable in terms of the cost. It is a big cost because as soon as you have a student on a different route, then it increases the cost of special education or whatever route that's being charged to the district, right? But the good thing with being part of a consortium is that you actually also split up the cost of this so that there is a manageable increase or decrease for everyone as part of that consortium. So this year, because of fewer out-of-district placement, and based on the expense trend, we were able to reduce the special ed busing line, and that resulted into a negative 2.8% reduction on transportation. Benefits, biggest piece of the budget. So first of all, our experience rating for workers' compensation is also not that great, and that's why we see an increase on our rate for workers' compensation. And then we have the significant increase of health benefits, which is 31.9%. It's a big percentage to absorb in a half a year cycle. On top of that, our health benefits broker is recommending that we budget 25% for fiscal year 27. And then the legislation on Chapter 44 also reduces what is contributed by the staff into the health plan. So some staff members are still on the older plan, which has now like an astronomical amount in terms of the cost. But with that, the district gets also a slight increase in the contribution because the contribution is based on the premium. This time, the current plan, or most of the plan where our staff are currently signed up for, is based on the salary. So it's a percentage of the salary with a cap. It's a big line item for our budget. We went from $4.6 million to a $6 million, almost $6.1 million budget on health benefits. Then the rest are school programs, regular education programs, from preschool, kindergarten salaries, teacher substitutes, grades 1 through 5 salaries, grades 6 to 8 salaries, home instruction, and then you also have your line items for classroom instruction. So we've done careful analysis of all our web-based services, and we've reached out again to vendors who can provide us with multi-year contracts so that we're able to maximize savings and open up this budget. So even though regular instructions shows a decrease of, I want to go back there, overall it's an increase of 0.06%, but those lines really has like a major 23.23% decrease. As far as special education instruction, there's a language or learning under language disabilities program, emotional regulation impairment, you have your resource room, the preschool with disabilities, and then you have your basic skills, bilingual education, and at tonight's agenda, you would see that for bilingual education, there's a decrease of 5.24%. That's because at tonight's agenda, you would see that we are purchasing, again, a 3-year contract with National Geographic so that we can purchase the materials that they need, hence the reduction. Then we have school-sponsored athletics and after-school programs. So, to not bore you more, the overall, let me just go back to this slide. With capital outlay, and which I will share with you the projects, the overall proposed budget is $30,109,142, which is equivalent to a 5.66% increase. As far as grants, Title I, again, the county has advised us that because these grants are difficult to project in terms of your award, they advise that we budget about 75 to 80% from your prior year's award as part of your budget. We even take a more conservative approach, is that we budget, for Title I, we're budgeting 66%, so have a reduction of 34%. And for IDEA, we only budgeted 69% from the prior year award. So that is the same level as what was budgeted originally. And for other restricted grants, this year, we have, we also received the playground grant, we have the focus grant, and that's why there's a big number in terms of other state and local grants, and then goes back to a more stable number, which is just mostly our PTO and then the non-public grant awards, as well as student activities. Debt service, which I already mentioned, our principal payment is $255,000 for principal, and then $217,275 for interest. Okay, I apologize for that. That was converted. That's the year 3 of our budget. So, in terms of budget composition, this slide gives a visual breakdown of how our overall budget is composed. As with any school district, the largest share goes to salaries and employee benefits, and then the next categories are, your other purchase services, miscellaneous, facilities maintenance, covers a very small percentage. So when people say, why can't we just cut this, and that to protect positions, the reality is the biggest bulk of your budget is, or the biggest bulk of our budget is our employee and salaries and benefits, and that's how you can achieve the big savings right away that you are in need of. All right, you have any questions so far? I'm gonna try to not bore you again, get you to the capital projects, which is very important. So, for capital projects, $1,369,000 withdrawal. For Hillside Elementary School, the district is part of the Northern Valley phone system, and so this year we were asked to budget the phone system upgrade really for both schools. You're going to see that project for both schools. All these projects are part of our capital long-range facilities plan, and those are the only projects where we are allowed to pull money from capital reserve and fund capital projects. So the district has identified $61 million in facility improvement, and right now we have built into our reserves approximately $7.6 million for capital reserve. Then we're taking out $1.6 million for the upcoming school year. Since 2019, we have invested about $4.5 million in capital projects directly just from capital reserve. Funds that we saved, built up over many years, and put to good work in our buildings and for our students. Sidewalk and curb replacement in Hillside, the uneven sidewalks could create a safety concern. It really creates a safety concern, and replacement will improve safe access for students, staff, and the families. We also have interior door replacement. There's a caveat there that it's subject to further discussion as we will continue to evaluate, because the costs, after getting the pricing and what we budgeted, it's more than what we've really budgeted for, so we're going to have to start prioritizing on what doors needed to be replaced. So we have to replace more doors that do not close properly and upgrade the older doors with large security windows to newer models with smaller viewing panels for improved security and consistency with some of the doors already replaced. For Tennekill Middle School, we are on phase 4, which is the final phase of a 4-year project to modernize our district's network infrastructure. Completing this phase will improve reliability, the speed, the Wi-Fi connectivity across both buildings, and I'm proud that we were able to work on this project in a 4-year cycle without having to put it in the operating fund. Same project as I mentioned earlier, which is a phone systems upgrade. Lunchroom tables. We are planning on replacing the wall pocket style tables in the gym, as they're difficult to secure and no longer functioning well. We actually had some staff injury with that. Interior door replacements, same exact thing. We have to look into which doors to be replaced first. And then several classrooms in the district have vertical unit ventilators that are nearing their 20-year-old lifespan. And so we are beginning to experience some failures, and some of the parts are no longer covered when we ask for service calls. So we're going to have to slowly replace them. And the reason why we're focusing on Tennekill for this is because if we're going to have a major project in Hillside for the sidewalk, we don't want to have 2 projects going on in the building at the same time. Try to balance it out. Okay. Almost done. So before discussing the tax levy, it is important to understand the framework we are working with. First, we operate under several state constraints. The most well-known is a 2% tax levy cap under New Jersey law, which limits how much districts can increase local taxes each year. Districts can go over this cap with allowable adjustments. At the same time, we also depend on state aid, and those amounts are determined at the state level. In addition, district must comply with several state mandates and regulations. Many of these are important requirements, but they do add costs that districts must absorb within the existing funding structure. The second factor is rising costs. Health benefits, again, as I mentioned earlier, as the largest cost driver. And we're also seeing, potential increases on special education costs, which are largely student-driven and often outside the district's control. And in addition, we must meet contractual salary obligations under our negotiated agreements. And like any organizations, the district must also absorb increases in utilities, insurance, and transportation services. And then there's program needs. That includes maintaining reasonable class sizes, providing student support and services, and preserving the academic programs that our community expects from our schools. So balancing these needs while working within the financial limits is one of the core challenges of building a responsible school budget. And finally, every decision we make has an impact on our community. We understand that our residents are sensitive to tax increases, and we take that responsibility seriously. Across the state, we are hearing more and more districts facing significant challenges. In many cases, districts are having to make difficult decisions, adjustments during the actual year, including reductions of program and staff, after the budget has already been adopted. So this situation is often called the fiscal cliff, where rising costs, particularly on health benefits, special education, contractual obligations, are growing faster than what the revenues are coming in. Yeah, so in our district, we are very aware of this pressure. Our approach has been to plan carefully and make thoughtful financial decisions that help us maintain stability. So, what does that mean for us? One of the strengths of our community is that, we have been able to manage reaching this fiscal cliff, right? And so I'm deeply grateful to our Board of Education, to every member that has served in this district and also the one serving today. Because where we stand financially, it did just not happen by accident. It is a direct result of your trust. You have your long-term vision and your confidence in the administration's guidance and recommendations, even sometimes the decisions are not easy. And we also acknowledge our community because the questions and the conversations and the high expectations, they all come from a place of care. And that is something that we never take for granted here in Closter. Tax impact. Let me walk you through what this budget means for the average Closter homeowner. So the overall school tax levy is increasing by 5.52%, which amounts to $1,322,436 net. Breaking that down, you have the general fund, which is increasing by $1,569,000 for general fund, but then we are offsetting it with the use of capital reserve. So there's a reduction on that in terms of the taxpayer share for the debt part. And that's why there's an 81.31% decrease. So the overall tax impact of this budget is 5.52%. However, and this is probably the most important point, despite the levy increase, the average homeowner will still see a reduction in your school tax bill. That's because Closter's assessed property value increased by $198.9 million. A larger tax base means a levy is spread over more value. So here are the numbers and the estimates based on the average home in Closter at $944,688. In 25-26 school year, the estimated school taxes for that average home would be $8,173.34. This year, the estimated school taxes portion would be $8,046.28. That's a reduction of $127.06. So, I want to emphasize this. I understand the concern that a levy increase is still an increase and taxpayers feel that. And I want to be transparent about that. The tax impact I'm presenting tonight is based on the average assessed home value. However, not every homeowner will see the same outcome, right? The borough has a rolling assessment for several years. So if your property's assessed value has increased significantly, your individual tax bill may reflect a different picture than what we are showing here tonight. I also want to make sure that the community is aware of something important. When you look at your tax bill, you see a line for school tax. That reflects our district, Hillside and Tennekill Middle School, but many of our students also go to attend Northern Valley Regional High School, which operates a separate budget. So that number is a combination of our local K-8 tax levy and then the regional high school. At the end of the day, our schools are one of Closter's greatest assets. Investing in them means investing in our children, in our community. Next steps and final, and the closing. Following tonight's public hearing and board approval, we will I will submit all the supplemental information and required documents, including the completed budget software, to the county office. And once approved, the budget will be advertised And the public hearing will be on April 30th at 7:30. The complete budget will be available on file and open to the public at the Closter Board of Education VA's office. And that will be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday to Friday, excluding holidays. Again, thank you to everyone in this room for your time tonight. I know it's a long, reading, and to all who worked tirelessly to bring this budget to where it is today.